take their time, and they will build out what they have to build out to get to where they want to go. And if it takes them 5 years or 50 years, they're going to do it methodical for a better way of life later. We want it right now. And that's the difference in the philosophy. So when they're dealing with other countries, they're going to be very pragmatic. They don't need the military. Let me tell you a little story that very few people understand. They saw it but didn't know what happened. The Chinese were like a bunch of boneheads. We parked 2 nuclear carriers off the coast of China. Now, everybody's heard about the 3-mile limit, and most people don't understand where the 3-mile limit came from, or the 12-mile limit or 200-mile limit, okay? Internationally, the 3-mile limit was established centuries ago because that's as far as a cannon could shoot. That was a cannon shot, 3 miles offshore, so that was the international limit. Then when airplanes came along, we created economic zones, and those went out to, I think, 50 or 100 miles. And now that we have more powerful weapons, the United States unilaterally created what was called an exclusive economic zone, which is essentially a 200-mile limit around us. Now, we get all upset when somebody goes into our exclusive economic zone, which is basically our international line. But when other countries exercise that exclusive economic zone, we don't acknowledge that. So what we did a few months back is we parked 2 nuclear carriers inside of China's exclusive economic zone. And they politely asked us to leave, and we would not leave. So while they are thinking they've got China over the barrel, one of China's submarines quietly pulled up 35 miles south of San Diego and fired an imp weapon at the USS Ronald Reagan, and it exploded behind the Reagan. Now, the Reagan is hardened. The imp weapon is not going to affect it. But it fried all the electrical equipment on the Princess cruise boat that had to be towed into San Diego, for those of you who remember that. And basically what they were telling the Americans is, we could take your aircraft carrier out anytime we want it. So if you want to play this game with us, we'll play it with you. And that Chinese submarine sat right at the mouth of San Diego Harbor, and nobody knew he was there. So that got people's attention. They didn't hurt anybody, but they made their presence known. Now, the American public won't know that, and the only reason I know it is because of what I did for 30 years. So the American people have no clue that the Chinese basically told the Americans to back off, quit putting nuclear carriers in our backyard. So if they wanted to hurt us, that was the perfect opportunity for them to do it. They're not like that. They don't want a war. They want a level playing field that we can all get along with. Everybody plays, everybody gets along. We don't have to have weapons. We don't have to have wars. And that's where they're going with this. And it's hard for the Western civilizations to understand it.
Well, of course, it's hard for us to understand it, at least from my personal opinion, is because we've had our heads in the sand, because we've been fed a line of goods from our parents and grandparents, and and we believe in. And I'm not saying it's all false, but there's certain falsehoods, there's certain marketing. I can only imagine how conniving things have been. And I'm not saying our government, everybody is a piece of crap. I mean, believe me, there's good and bad in everything, whether it's the CIA, the FBI, any number. I mean, we are American citizens. We are a proud nation. But yeah, I can definitely see how that's true. And I guess the reason that I asked you to be on this call, and the reason that I've been preaching so much here in the past few weeks, is because I don't want people, even as outrageous as some of the things that you've said tonight, and some people are probably pissed off after this call. They'll probably want, my head on a platter, or, Terry K's, or any number of different people. Yes, Terry, I did say your name. But I guess the truth needs to come out. Now, some people may yell back as when I say that that's not the truth. But at the same time, I guess when this all finally goes down, we'll see the real proof in the pudding. It's like it's all going to come out sooner or later. So I guess we'll all just have to wait. But as I've told other people on calls, as preposterous as it sounds for a currency, for us to all get rich off and jump up 3,000-4,000%, you know, open your minds enough to be able to listen to this gentleman, to hear what he has to say. You know, you can't make up this stuff. You can't suddenly, you know, be able to just pinpoint all these different things that you've said. And I guarantee you probably haven't even hit on hardly anything compared to what you could get into, and I'm not going to ask you to do that. But I guess what I have to say, because I know you have to go. I mean, we've been an hour and a half into this conversation, and I know people would love to hear more. But I guess if you had, you know, one last thing to tell everybody, you know, not just with the Iraqi dinar or the global settlements or prosperity programs and so forth and so on, but what would you tell people? I mean, going forth with everything you've had to say, with all this being so hard to swallow, what would you tell them?
Well, I would tell them that God gave them a brain, and it's time they have to step up to the plate and use it. I would tell them to be prudent. I would not do anything quickly. I would watch things settle out. Once this gets underway, which I expect in the next day or so, it's going to be very, very quick. I wouldn't make any major decisions for at least 6 months to a year and watch the dust settle. And then you'll see the proof of my words. Either they'll be true or they won't, and only you can make that judgment. My entire life, I have unwittingly been thrust into this, not by design, but just by where I was and what I did. And it was very hard for me to grasp onto this. The area that I worked was very high-tech, and it was populated with more PhDs than you'll find on any college campus. And the stuff that we worked with was very high. Now, I tell you that because what I'm telling you tonight is, I know it's like trying to get a drink of water from a fire hose. There's a lot there coming at you right now. And I have a lot of empathy for you, and I understand that. And this is not something to be afraid of or to get upset with. This is not an emotional thing. This is just the way history unfolded. But you have to take your time now, and you have to understand that you've been led astray all of your life. And now you're going to have that moment in the Dachau concentration camp. You're going to have to walk through and see the truth, and it isn't going to be pretty. But for your own sanity, take your time in what you do and let the information evolve. You've got kind of a very, very shallow scratch of the surface tonight, but there's going to be a lot more things come out, a lot of things I probably don't even know about. But the fact is there's been a huge, huge operation that's going on right before your very eyes, and when it's unveiled to you, you're going to have this aha moment and realize that all these things have been hidden in plain sight, and it's going to be a shock. And so that's why I keep referring to this as your Dachau moment, because it's going to be hard to swallow, and it isn't going to be easy for any American to realize what's really been going on. So the best advice I can give to you is all of you have a common interest, and stick together and do research, and don't take anything at face value, and take your time in the decisions you make, because the world is changing now, and it's changing in a very dynamic way that we have never seen in the history of mankind before. This is a monumental moment, and that's why all this is probably so hard to swallow, is because the deception has been monumental for the last 100 years, and now this charade is being disrobed, and what you're going to see is going to shock you. And what I'm telling you is nowhere near what you're going to discover. But this is not the moment in your life to be afraid. This is the moment in your life to pay attention. This is the moment in your life where you have to be deliberate and prudent about what you do.
You know, it reminds me of a buddy of mine who I get a little bit of intel from on all this Dinar stuff. But he pointed out the Matrix movie. And there comes that point where, do I take the red pill and see what's behind the veil here, the curtain, or do I take the blue pill and go back to my life? And I guess that's where I'm at with all of this, you know. And God, for some reason, put me in touch with you and Thing 1 and Thing 2, the people that you know, at least to a certain degree. And, you know, because I wanted to know the truth. And I spoke about this last night on our conference call, and I really did. I wanted to know the truth. I mean, that's what everybody seeks, is truth, right? You want to hear it out of people's mouths. You want to be able to see it. You want to be able to touch it to some degree. And I guess, again, that's why I brought you onto this call. And before I let you go, I do have one other question, is with these prosperity programs, the global settlements, a lot of people don't believe them. They don't believe them. I mean, even the people who have said they're going to get these prosperity programs, people who said they're going to get these settlements, whether it's CMKX or people who have been told that they're getting money from donors, to any number of different things. What can you tell people who are listening, who are in this, you know, in that realm, I guess you'd say? Is there anything that you can tell them to give them some sort of hope or indication or anything of it's coming to an end? Because I know that we've discussed this. You mentioned it about, hey, we're in the final hours of this, but of course we've all heard that before. It's like chasing our tail to a certain extreme. So if you could hit on that, that would be great.
Okay. Well, the whole thing has been designed to chase your tail. That's the irony of this. The prosperity programs were actually Ponzi schemes designed to engage in illegal transactions and drug laundering. And all those things were done as part of sanctioned government activity, albeit with the CIA. And so each time one was created, another one would be created as a counter to it to gut it. And so the idea, it was a Ponzi scheme designed to gut a Ponzi scheme, designed to gut another Ponzi scheme, and they kept building money. And at some point, they decided in order to stop this, they would throw the money out. Let me give you the only example I can think of that would be appropriate. Let's say in your neighborhood, you have a guy that is selling drugs. And this guy is the bane of the neighborhood. He terrorizes everybody. But you know, up in his bedroom, he's got millions and millions of dollars in cash. So one day you decide the way to stop him is you run up there and you take the cash and you run, but you don't keep it for yourself. You throw it all over the street so all the people get it. Now it's impossible for him to regain that money to start all over again. And so that's what this is all about, is taking the money and throwing it out to everybody so it cannot be given back, so it cannot be retrieved, so that the only way they're going to have to play fairly or die.
Yeah, but how does it, well, and again, it's probably getting back into another bigger questions, but it just seems like, you know, we hear about like CMKX, huge Ponzi scheme, right?
Yeah.
And how do they hold on to that money? And I even, you know, talking with some of your contacts, you know, how they've used that money, you know, and how
it was a series of shell corporations and trusts, and all this money moved around, one scheme trying to out-scheme the other one. But all these accounts were used for illegal trading and used for money laundering and used for drugs, and they had a mechanical purpose in the black world a long time ago. But in order to stop it, in order to basically purge the money out so that it couldn't be reconstituted to continue the